Okay, so just so you know, Paul, I've not done a recording on Zoom before, so I don't know how this is going to work out. Just a heads up.
All right.
Okay. All right. So it's
I'm
my
so
Zoom
good at
account.
technology. So,
Yeah, but it's your show. So when you're ready, you say start.
all right. Yeah, I'm start. There'll be a lot of editing. Start. Okay. Go ahead.
It's your show, man. I'm waiting for you. You gotta,
Oh, I got to interview you. Oh, okay. That's right.
dude. You gotta
Um,
leave these cuts in. You gotta leave this in. You can't be editing this stuff out. This is good.
oh my God. It's been a day. Okay. So, I'll do an intro. All right. Hi, I'm Paul from Apex Mindset. Today I'm gonna talk with Ian Kinder from Live Safe Academy. Part of being a man and being in control of yourself on your own mental point of origin and being that alpha guy that we're striving to be is being able to take care of and protect yourself, your loved ones, and possibly any other innocent people around you. So I'm going to talk with Ian today about that and some courses he has that can help people with that. What's up, Ian?
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. So why don't you tell me about these courses and tell me a little bit about your evolution from as a self-defense instructor, where you're going in-person courses and then things changed with the COVID nonsense, and now you have to figure out how to deliver your instruction through a different medium. Tell me about how that evolved.
I will absolutely do that, but let me start off with a couple things first. This is my first time recording on Zoom, and I can see that as we're talking. This is my first time recording on Zoom, and I can see that as we're talking, it's not shifting back between you and me like it would in Skype or a Google Hangout. So I'm going to do the best I can to kind of switch the video between us. Just a heads up to your viewers, I'm going to do the best that I can. Also, I know, trying to be in character for your show, I don't smoke cigars, but I'm going to honor your show anyways by drinking a Guinness. This is all I got. And I'm not sponsored by Guinness, but I'm going to do the best I can to be in character. And thirdly, and this is all jokes aside, I want to thank you for your service. You know, you and I have been friends for a long time. We've been training partners for a long time. I really appreciate and value the relationship that we have. And I've been very honored and proud to see how you've grown with a person over the years, and how your service in the military has really impacted you as a person. And I have a lot of respect for that. And, you know, the viewers don't know this, but you're being put on standby right now to potentially serve our country. And it's just something that I want to take a moment and thank you for. But as far as my
Thanks.
background, you're welcome, sir. Absolutely. Where my background is concerned is I was exposed to violence at a very young age. I lived a violent lifestyle for a very long time. I was a ward of the state. I was in multiple youth homes. And I even spent 2 Michigan winters as a homeless teen. I had a mom who was legitimately insane and a father who abandoned me at a very young age. And I ended up growing in or around the city of Detroit back when Detroit was the murder capital of the world, or at least the country. And I had to face a lot of challenges that I had to face on my own without knowing what to do. And I remember how that feels. So I've dedicated my life to trying to help prepare people for those situations so they don't have to face them the way that I did, not knowing what to do and how to learn through experience. And that's something that I really respect about you and some of the other friends that we have, is that we've taken our own personal struggles and we've used those struggles as our motivation to help other people. And I have a lot of respect for you for that. And that's what I'm doing also. And I'll mention just very briefly so people have a little bit more context about me. I've been an instructor since 1990, so I've been around for a while. And my school, Live Safe Academy, we first went public back in January of '99. So my school has also been around for a while. But we actually started by working with the 785th, the Military Police Battalion. You're probably familiar with who they are. They were at Fraser at the time. I don't know where they are now. Where we spent 6 months certifying all their combat lifesavers through the American Red Cross in first aid and CPR. So as a school, we've actually been around since '98. And we specialize in the training of first aid, assault and crime prevention, unarmed self-defense, chemical defense sprays, sharp weapons, impact weapons, tasers, and gun training, all the way from I never touched a gun before to I want a Michigan concealed pistol license to far beyond what a concealed pistol license would teach. So we have a very comprehensive approach to safety. We also have a very diverse staff that includes law enforcement officers. We have military personnel, including you, Paul, one of the instructors on our staff, something that I'm also very grateful for, and we'll be featuring you in upcoming classes. But we have registered nurses and attorneys on our staff. All of our instructors are certified through nationally recognized groups, and we work with everybody from law enforcement to military to corrections, work with medical facilities, with school systems. We do everything from one-on-one private lessons in people's homes to large national workshops. So that's a little bit about us. We're also an approved criminal justice training provider through the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. And as far as COVID is concerned, you know, when we were teaching here locally, we would teach a lot of students. I would teach 6 to 7 days a week. I would easily teach triple digit number of students every week. And I was so busy doing that I really didn't have time to expand in a way where I could help more people beyond just the people in the local Detroit, Michigan area. And that was a good thing because we have been helping a lot of people here locally, and I'm very proud of that. But because classes got shut down, you know, my attitude is you use every crisis as an opportunity to be better so that you're better after the crisis than you are before the crisis. And this shutdown has given me time to take our courses on a national level through live virtual training. And in March, we said we got to do this. And within just a few months, we were already live with our courses. And then it was my goal to take these courses on a national and even international level. And we already have students that have signed up in other states. And we had our first international student not that long ago. And I'm very proud of that because now it gives me a chance. I say this very humbly, but it gives me a chance to take whatever value I have to offer and bring this to a national level so that I can help more people, more than just beyond the local area. And of course, when things get back to normal, we're going to continue doing our local training, but now we have the option of doing these live virtual classes that can be done on not only a national level, but an international level.
Man, I love it. I love it. So I'm glad you got into that because I am not necessarily an interviewer. You know, as you know, I'm doing courses and coaching and consulting and videos where I'm the only one talking. So I'm not this trained interviewer who knows what he's doing. I forget that the rest of the audience doesn't actually know that you're one of, I would say, definitely one of the best self-defense and use of force instructors, period. I'm going to make that bold statement right now on my channel. Like, you are the best instructor, period. I've been around different states, different places. I've seen what people teach, how they deliver their material. Other than some other people in our circles, like Lou is very talented, right? Joe, some of these guys, I don't see anybody that's doing a better job. You know what I mean? Now, I want to specify that too. This is not just like martial arts, right? There's a better jiu-jitsu player out there. You know what I mean? If we're going to get on the mats and do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there's a better MMA fighter out there. But that's not what we're talking about. You're studying and looking at violence and what happens in violent scenarios in real life encounters. And you're dissecting that stuff and you're putting together a program that anybody can latch onto and develop skill sets and become excellent at being able to handle themselves. And that's a talent in and of itself. And so when I say best use of force instructor, that's what I mean. You know, I'm not saying you're going to go get in there with Mike Tyson. I'm sure not getting in there with Mike Tyson if you've been watching him train lately. But, you know, but Mike Tyson's not going to necessarily take somebody who is either athletic or not athletic or whatever their attributes are and take them and teach them how to handle themselves in a variety of use and force encounters that they would encounter, you know, as an everyday person, where they would have to be defending their lives, you know, not in the ring or in the cage or in some competition environment or whatever, but where it counts, where lives are on the line. And, you know, in my military experience, we got guys who are very talented at fighting, very talented, but not necessarily the most talented at fighting in the competition environment or in the martial arts school, but they know how to use the tactics and stuff that they've been taught to be able to win. And that's what you're teaching people. So I'm glad you went into your background there, because that's probably what should have been the first question that I should have asked. And I guess so. Now, the second thing we're getting into, because we're talking about, so I don't get too off track. I had another thing. I really want to comment on your mindset, because this is a mindset that I am in a variety of different ways teaching people and displaying to people on my channel, which is to take a crisis and make yourself better. When something bad happens, when something that's not good happens, whether it's COVID, whether it's a self-defense circumstance or an assault, you know, someone goes through an assault as a victim, right? And they go, okay, what do I do with this now? Or whether it's a broken relationship or having trouble with dating lives and stuff like that, having trouble with PTSD. I mean, we can just go down the list. You take that crisis, you take that bad thing, and you figure out, how can I make myself better? And that's the difference between winners and everybody else. And I want people watching my channel to be a winner, whether they're in a self-defense scenario or whether they're just winning at their vocation and their career or their, you know, entrepreneurship, or whether they're or winning in their relationships, whatever that looks like to them. You know, in order to win, you got to be able to face failures, face crisis, and overcome them. And that's, you embody that, you teach that when it comes to use of force and self-defense, but you embody it in your business model. You know, we talked about the struggles that you've been having just because of the COVID thing, and the primary way of you delivering instruction has been these workshops. And now you have a solution to that problem. So I know it's new, but tell me about that solution. Tell me more about the online instruction, how that translates to the end user, you know what I mean? And how effective that is, and some of the strengths and limitations to it.
Absolutely. Well, let me first mention that, as you can tell by the way we're dealing with the technology here, I'm a caveman when it comes to technology. So I had to kind of go into this area where I'm not naturally inclined. But it doesn't matter, though. If your motivation is to help people, then you're going to do whatever it takes. And, you know, to give credit where credit is due, like you put out a video about 10xing yourself anytime you're facing a challenge. And I'll tell you, you know, that was a motivational video for me to help keep me focused and how I was dealing with the challenges that are going on here, and your ability to teach people how to think. It, folks really don't know our relationship, but we've been close friends for a long time. And you know, I've really been impressed with your ability to help people. And I feel like you're gifted in a way that I don't feel really there's other people that are gifted like you. And we have other friends that have gifts to share. And we've all really been there to motivate each other to say, you have a duty to take those gifts and help improve the lives of other people. And I'm not saying that about myself. I'm saying that about you, but I definitely want to do whatever I can to help other people too. And I'll tell you, I wasn't just exposed to violence at a young age, although I saw a lot of bad things and I experienced a lot of bad things. And frankly, I did a lot of bad things, but I also, you know, spent many years providing armed protection to people who are in danger, either because they work in high crime areas or because they're being threatened. And then I spent many years working for 2 medical examiners, including Wayne County, which is one of the most active in the country. And I've been out to triple-digit homicide scenes. So I've dealt with not only victims who are sharing with me their experiences, not only protecting people from getting victimized, but I've been to countless homicide scenes where people have been the ultimate victim of crime. And that's a lot of motivation for me to make sure that I do everything in my power that my students, however long I got them for, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, a virtual class, an in-person class, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they're not one of those dead bodies that have to get lifted up off the ground. And we've actually had many people saved by our programs. And I had one woman who was attacked at a gas station, and she said to me, Ian, not only was I able to fight him off, but she said, for the first time in my life, I had the confidence to fight back. And that's the stuff that motivates me to overcome all these challenges and do whatever I can to help people. But I also want to be humble about this, because I don't have the experiences that a lot of people have had. I didn't go off and serve my country on 3 tours like you did. You know, there's a lot of people who have experienced more violence than me in whatever capacity they experienced today. So I'm certainly not trying to put myself out there as somebody who has had the most experience or anything like that, because I'm not. But I have had my experiences, though. I've had more than most people, and I've seen more than most people, but I certainly am not going to break any records with my experiences. But those experiences are what motivate me to help other people. And let me put this in a context that I know you and I can both relate to, because we're both martial artists, and I think we really love and appreciate the aspect of our life that has been devoted to martial arts. But the problem with martial arts, and I say, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, but I'm just being honest. Right. It's been a long time since battles have been won or lost based on the contents that are taught in martial arts schools. And because of that separation from reality, where information isn't getting vetted on a regular basis, that a lot of times these martial arts programs can just drift away from reality. And I'm not saying there aren't very talented martial artists out there, because there are. And I'm not saying there aren't a lot of martial artists out there that can successfully defend themselves in real situations, because they can. But for the average person, whether it's a police officer or the average person in the military or the average private citizen who doesn't get a lot of training, and they want to go home with their health and their safety, they want to learn skills that they can learn right now that give them the best possible chance of success with the least training possible. And that's what our programs are all about. So I was somebody who was exposed to violence a lot before I finally joined a martial arts program. In fact, it was my martial arts program that reformed me out of being a kid that got into a lot of trouble to being an adult who was productive and a useful member of society. But because I had that experience, I saw a lot of what we were being taught just wasn't real world. And what I thought about for my own personal training, I said, look, if I'm going to leave this martial arts studio and go out to my car and get attacked, if I knew for sure that's what's going to happen, what am I going to do right now to prepare for that conflict? Other than the obvious answer of preventing it, because prevention is the only guarantee of success. But if I couldn't avoid the altercation, what am I going to do right now that's going to give me the best possible chance of success? That really evolved my own personal training, and it set a standard, a filter that said I'm only going to spend time on things that are going to increase my chance of success. Well, when I became more dedicated to training and I was taking on the responsibility of other people, the next evolution I went through is I said, look, if one of my students are going to get attacked in the parking lot after one of my classes, what can I do right now to give them that best possible chance of success with the least amount of training? And I do train a lot of people that go into high-risk environments, whether it's law enforcement working in inner cities, or it's people who are living in inner cities, or it's people who are high risk because they're being threatened or whatever. I want to know that I did everything I can to help them. And I asked myself a question. I said, look, if all I could do is say something to somebody before they had to defend themselves, is there something that I can say that can increase their chance of success? There is. And then I say, if I had 5 minutes to teach them a physical skill, is there a physical skill that I can teach them right now that can improve their chance of success? There is. First time I hit somebody with a palm strike, it was a buddy of mine that said, hey, do it like this. And I did it like that, and it won the fight. How long did that take? Literally just a couple minutes. but it increased my chance of success. And that just broadens out to say, now, if I got them for an hour, if I got them for 2 hours, if I got them for 3 hours, for 12 hours, what can I do in that amount of time to give them the best possible chance of success? That's part one. Part two is, and you know this because you are part of this, one of the things that we specialize is in force on force training. That's where we take people, we put them into realistic assault scenarios, so they have to defend themselves as close as they can to a real situation, whether it's unarmed combat, chemical sprays, sharper impact weapons, tasers, or gun training. Now, I'm very careful to say that training is never a real situation, period. And there's never anything you can do in training that will fully duplicate a real situation, because in training, nobody's trying to hurt you on purpose. And in real life, you don't even know if you're going to be breathing afterwards. But there's a lot of things that we can do in the simulations that are like a real situation and can prepare people for real situations. And at our peak, conservatively, we were probably role playing about 600 people a year. And I would say that's a very conservative number. And Paul, again, you know this because you are part of it. And what I was able to do then is I was able to say, okay, if I only have 1 hour of training and I put them into simulated assaults where they have to hit full force, padded instructor wearing a suit where they're not going to get hurt, and that student's got to hit them full force. What can they do without coaching, under stress, in a dynamic environment? That completely revolutionized the type of training that we did, because it forced us to get as simple as possible, to develop skills that are based on the body and the mind's natural responses to stress, but not just the body and mind's natural responses to stress. And I didn't invent any of this stuff. This stuff's been around for as long as violence has been around. But this is what we focused on for our curriculum. What are natural common movements? Because even if something is a gross motor skill, large muscles making forceful contractions, if it's not a natural common movement, it may not be reflexive under stress. So simple things like a palm strike, which is just like pushing something closed, that's a reflexive skill under stress because we push things all the time. Using a toe kick to kick the shin bone is exactly like walking. A knee strike is just like walking up a staircase. So those movements, because they're so repetitive throughout our entire life, they're much more likely to be reflexive under stress. So that then becomes a focal point of our skills. And it's that kind of filter. And we got to understand, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but just because you can do something in simulations doesn't mean you're going to do it for real. But if you can't do it in simulations, you are very unlikely to do it for real. So that becomes a filter. But here's the other thing. We look at what's happening in the simulations, then we look at real violence. And if we can see a correlation there, then we know the simulations are giving us realistic feedback in regard to real violence. And then that becomes a basis of our training. And for any curriculum that I have, for however long I have you, I'm going to make sure that what I'm teaching you is what I know you have the best chance of success, because there are no guarantees. But what's going to give you the best chance of success with the amount of time I have under real conditions. That's what our goal is.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's great. It's a very results-based, practical approach. And that is, again, the difference between both of us are martial arts, nerds, right? Like, I love training martial arts. I love it. And it's, I can totally nerd out with something that is a set of techniques that I might be working on in a grappling scenario, let's say, or, some sort of weapon scenario that is not at all anything I'm ever going to run into in a military confrontation or a street confrontation, but I enjoy training it and I enjoy building those skills. So, so I do that. Well, that's because I'm a martial arts person that's trained for 35 years now, I think. I mean, 37 years now. So I just like it, but that's not necessarily increasing my survivability. Or if I were to teach those things I'm working on today to a new student or that wants to know how to defend themselves today, because they might have to defend themselves today, or a soldier going into combat who has only a limited amount of training time, and he is going to be in a situation like if we do get there's guys going on orders right now to break up riots and to break up civil unrest. That's something that you had mentioned, and I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I'm on the we'll say I'm on the side of having to deal with that. You know what I mean? And handle that. So I can't say too much about it for security reasons. But yeah, these guys are, they show up and they may be an infantry guy or whatever who's been training for a conflict someplace else. And now he has to learn riot skills to deal with civil unrest and riots. And I might only have an hour, 2 hours. And then they're like, okay, get out there, and so that's how it goes. That's how it works, and so if there's a sense of urgency there, I can't train him like a martial artist or like a competitive fighter where I'm picking apart one particular guy's fighting style because we're prepping him for a fight in 3 months. You know what I mean? Like we got to train them with that sense of urgency in mind. And it's just the most practical way of approaching it for someone who wants to learn how to defend themselves or handle themselves. That's it. And I always go back to those roots, even though I'm a martial artist. I like to goof off and train martial arts, but I always come back to, okay, what do I need right now? Action plan, go. And what that mirrors much of what I do in my consultations when I'm dealing with relationship coaching or mindset coaching, hypnotherapy, EMDR, trauma therapy. They got an hour with me. So I want to give them what are the problems we can solve right now, or the things we can do right now to get you to the goal that you're trying to get to. And then what's an action plan you can action right now after this call until our next call. And that's how people get results. It's not, I may talk about theoretical stuff that people enjoy hearing about and learning about in my videos, but in a consultation, it's not just an extension of my videos, it's practical right now solving problems. And that's what you do with your teaching. And that's what's pretty good.
And I'll mention one more thing. And again, I'm having to switch here, guys. I apologize for the video quality. Both Paul and I actually, maybe Paul's come a lot further than I have, but I know we both had to
No, I suck at technology.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Right.
If we can't threaten it with physical violence, we're pretty much out of luck.
Right.
But I have a lot of instructors that come to me for instruction because of the reputation that we have. And again, I say that very, very humbly because I'm honored to help people in whatever way that I can for whatever I have to offer. There's a lot of people out there with way more experience than me and a lot of phenomenal trainers out there. And I'm just kind of giving my little piece as best I can. But she was talking about how she had a situation where her house caught on fire and she called 911 and they asked her for the location and she completely froze and that she couldn't even speak to the operator. Now, think about how much time we spend talking throughout the course of our life. And yet in that moment in time, when they asked her for her address, which she clearly knows because she's been living there for who knows how long, she couldn't even physically form words.
Yeah.
And that just goes to speak with how simple things can be. And, going back to these type of scenarios that we do, we'll work with businesses where we go in and we do loss prevention. And some of the training that we do with their employees or their loss prevention people, but not just loss prevention people, all of their employees. If they want us to, we'll put them in armed robbery scenarios. And we take realistic looking weapons, and everything's safe, but we take realistic looking weapons and we'll do things like grab them by the hair and put weapons right to their head, and we'll scream at them and we'll tell them to open up the register or we're going to kill them. And this is all done in a safe and a responsible way. And they know what's going to happen. That's why they hire us. But these people that open registers countless times a shift can't even get the register open on the first try, and very often can't get the register open at all. And of course, when we train them specifically how to deal with that. But the point is, who would think about that, right? People go into these really complex things in training, but in real life, people can't even talk or open a register, much less do a lot of the other things. And I'll just mention this last thing, and I think we both got to be careful about getting in the weeds here because we're both trainers and we're both really passionate about this stuff. But If you look at your average prison fight, right? Cameras on a prison yard. Who really fights unarmed combat in a modern context, right? It's not the
Yeah.
military. It's not the
Right.
law enforcement. It's not the public, because we all got guns, right? Who usually fights the most unarmed combat and sharp weapons are prisoners, because that's all
Yeah.
they got. And if you see the average prison fight, it looks no different than kids on a playground in grade school. It
Yeah.
looks no different. It's this or it's this, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I think we can both say confidently that if you were to take your average prisoner and put him against your average black belt, that prisoner would probably win. And the reason why is not because of the technical ability, because real violence almost never turns on technical ability.
Right. Yep.
Real violence almost always turns on raw aggression.
Yep.
And it's that raw aggression that solves the problems that we can't avoid. Because let me be very clear to say the only guarantee of safety is prevention. And avoidance, the best way to deal with any emergency, prevent it before it happens. Avoidance is the only guarantee of success. Every situation we avoid is a situation that we win. The best way not to be there on the back end is not to be there on the front end. And if we are in a situation, the best thing to do is to get away. Because frankly, you can do everything right and still die. And nobody's immune to injury or death. We all break, bleed, and die. There are things we can do to increase our chance of success, but there's nothing we can do to guarantee our chance of success. I don't care who you are or what you do for a living or what you carry for protection or how much experience you have. It doesn't matter. We all break, bleed, and die, and we can all lose. And even if you win the fight, you can still end up becoming injured or crippled in a way that can forever change your life. So we always want to avoid situations. But if you're in the situation, then we have to shut the threat down as quickly, as aggressively, as decisively as we can, because the longer that situation continues, the longer you're in danger. But not just that. The longer the situation continues, the more danger you're in. Because the more likely the threat will escalate, the more likely that you'll become injured or exhausted. So we always want to try to avoid situations, but if we can't avoid them, we have to be very aggressive and very decisive. And it's that mindset that makes the biggest difference. And that mindset needs to fuel the simplest skills possible that have the highest chance of success with the least amount of training. Because if it's not simple, it will probably never work under real conditions, no matter how much you train it. And I understand there's exceptions to the rule, but that is the rule, and that is the guideline that most people are going to have to follow in most situations. And you know this with your special forces, special operations background. What makes the people in special forces and special operations so effective is not that they're doing really cool tactical stuff, it's that they're really good at the basics. And I can tell you that working in the field myself in the limited capacity that I did, that no matter how experienced you were, you still made mistakes. You still messed up. Why did I do that? I know better, because we're human beings. That's why we got to keep things simple. Focus on mindset and paying attention. And that's the brass tacks of what keeps people safe. The more complex it is, the less likely it is to work, regardless of how much training you have. And any instructor who says more training in most cases is missing the point.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's you're so on message. I love it. I aspire to be as good as you are on my messages. Right now I'm doing a lot of editing on my videos, and it's painful. You just deliver it so well, and it makes so much sense. Now I don't want to go. We could literally talk about this for hours, and my YouTube audience will drone out eventually, and probably, because they're not as passionate about it as we are. So I want to get we've got a lot of messages that we've gotten across in a short amount of time, and hopefully the audience understands it, and it opens up their paradigm and their eyes as far as how to approach these things. Because I think people look at learning a skill set like this as maybe bigger than what it has to be. you know what I mean, to start training, just to start doing something. I think they look at it like, man, okay, I got to go to a martial arts school. I got to pick the right one. I'm probably going to get beat up over there. And I got to do 5 years of training, you know, at least before I can use this stuff. And, you know, maybe hopefully if I get a black belt for the next 5 to 10 years, you know what I mean? It becomes this insurmountable thing. And like, God, I don't have time for that. You know, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, though, by approaching these topics the way that you are promoting, an action-based, results-based approach. What can I do right now? What little bit of training can I do? Or can I do this course that's, you know, 4 hours on a Saturday and be this much further along? I mean, it's amazing what just a few hours or a few minutes even sometimes of training can do to make someone go from not capable to being capable of handling themselves in these situations. And I've seen it a million times, you know, in my circles. And of course you're doing it every day. So it's pretty awesome. I do want to ask, cause I want to get into, cause what you're doing is you're going to be putting out some workshops over video and Zoom and stuff like that. And our old paradigm was always to show up somewhere and have hands-on with an instructor, which is of course valuable. You know, we're not going to deny that how valuable it is. But the struggle we face is there's still a lot of restrictions with the COVID thing. And there's people not allowing us to get together and to have that close proximity with this scare, with this virus. So going on the principle of what can I do right now, you know, because as we're stuck in a COVID scenario, civil unrest was getting bigger and worse. Otherwise, I was active duty before, I'm National Guard now, in case anyone's wondering or not tracking that. I would not be getting calls and having to filter soldiers and get involved with dealing with civil unrest. It would be a policing problem, right? It's getting worse. So the propensity for someone to run into, or probability rather, of someone to run into violence is getting bigger, but the opportunities to train and to do what it takes, you know, to learn some skill sets to be successful, if that happens to these people, those opportunities are less and less. So you're going to start doing some courses, offering courses online. The question people are going to ask is, how can I actually learn this stuff online? Is that something that I can do really? Is this going to be worth it or effective? So for those people who are asking those questions, because I know that's the question, what do we have to say about that?
Well, first of all, it's a very good question, because you've always got to assume that anybody who's trying to sell you something is going to be biased. And it's important that people are critical thinkers, because it's their safety that hangs in a balance, and they have to make sure that they are always making the best choice possible to protect their safety. So I want them to ask questions. That's important. Always ask questions. Don't assume what anybody tells you is true, whether it comes out of my mouth or anybody else's, because you're the one who ultimately has to deal with the consequences. But let me give you some food for thought. Couple different things. First of all, when you look at boxing, okay, which is a great model for training, you initially start by learning the body mechanics, the footwork, through things like shadow boxing. Even before shadow boxing, you're just in a standing position, kind of learning your movements. Then you put that together with shadow boxing, and that has a lot of really important value that kind of starts that training process. Then you learn how to take those skill sets and apply them to a heavy bag. So now you can start to develop other attributes. Then you take those skill sets and you work with a coach who uses focus mitts, and you hit the striking pads with the coach, which is much more interactive. You're now having to react to a person. You're not just hitting a bag that isn't doing a lot that you have to react to. It swings and things, but for the most part, you're just directing your skills towards a bag. You're not really reacting to the bag a lot. With a coach, you can really have to react. And then, of course, you get in the ring and you spar. And this is our preparation for the real event, which for boxing, of course, is going to competition. Well, when a boxer graduates from shadow boxing to hitting the heavy bag, they don't stop shadow boxing. Because there are things that shadow boxing does for them that are essential for the totality of the time that they're boxing. They're never going to stop doing that. When they go to hit the heavy bag, they don't, okay, now they go to hitting pads with the coach. right? Well, they don't stop hitting the heavy bag, right? When they start sparring, they don't stop hitting pads with the coach. When they go to competition, they don't stop sparring. These become a continuum of tools that they use to develop a complete and total fighter. Now, in gun training, this is done through dry fire, where you learn how to get comfortable with your gear in a safe environment. And then, of course, you learn, and that's the equivalent of shadow boxing. And then you go to do live fire, which is absolutely essential, of course, where you get comfortable with shooting. You get validation for your dry fire practice because you're seeing your accuracy. And that is like hitting heavy bag. Then you go into what we call man-on-man drills or force-on-force drills, where you use things like simunitions or airsoft, which for a very long time, we've been proponents of airsoft since 2000. Okay. Yeah. Back in 2000, when a lot of gun people said that's not real training. And a lot of people are only coming around to the fact that airsoft is valuable training. They still think if it's not if they're not going bang on a range, it's not real training, which is very odd to me because they advocate dry fire.
Right.
Right. Like that literally doesn't make sense to me. But airsoft training is where you can do force on force drills where you're shooting at each other in an interactive but structured way, where you're developing a lot of important attributes like shooting and moving. You can learn how to shoot in a 360-degree environment. You can shoot in the dark. You can draw and shoot. You can integrate gun skills with unarmed combat skills. Just things you can't do on a range. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody can. Military people can't, because most military people only have access to the range when they're doing a group exercise. They'll just go shoot on their own. They don't have that access. And neither does law enforcement, by the way. If they're not doing a department level activity, most officers don't have access to their department range just on their own. And a lot of departments don't even have ranges. So all of us, military, law enforcement, and the public, are stuck going to a commercial range or a gun club, and both are very limited in what you can do.
Right.
So you have this force-on-force training that you do with airsoft, which is like working with a coach doing mitts. And then you have the sparring, which is like the force-on-force training, where you're doing either the unarmed combat force-on-force, or you're doing the shooting in a force-on-force, where you're doing the simulated assaults. And then, of course, you have the real event that we're all training for, God forbid, which is actually being an assault. There's no part of that training process that you ever eliminate, because every part of that process is absolutely essential. When we first put out these virtual courses, I honestly was skeptical. I was very skeptical of the amount of value that we could offer people. I tried it out, but I was skeptical. As soon as I did it, I was shocked by the amount of value that we can impart towards people in virtual training. And I'm saying this as honestly as I can say it. I was shocked that in some ways, not in all ways, but in some ways, we can actually enhance their learning experience through virtual training in ways that they weren't getting in in-person training. Now, make no mistake, in-person training is going to offer benefits that virtual training will never give. But there are things that you can get through virtual training that are really beneficial, like shadow boxing or dry fire practice is the gun training, like shadow boxing is unarmed combat skills. Virtual training also provides a very essential part of that learning process that is extremely valuable. And that's where you learn to focus on not only the conceptual concepts, things that we talked about in class, but also developing the physical skills, developing the proper movement, the same way that you would in dry fire practice or shadow boxing, which is extremely beneficial as both a starting point and an ongoing process of development. We can do that in virtual training, and we can focus on that in virtual training in ways that we don't focus on in in-person training, because we're graduating to these other steps. But now we can really isolate that one step. It's a phenomenal foundation, and it's something that's really beneficial. And before I kick it back to you, I just want to say, we not only have our classes, and this video will include a link to our classes that people can sign up for at any time, but I don't just teach myself. We feature a lot of other instructors, and you're going to notice that the instructors that we feature are not the big commercial names. And I'm not criticizing anybody for that. if you are one of those big commercial names, I'm not saying you don't
Right.
have a lot to offer, but the instructors that we go after are the instructors that had the real world experience that on a commercial level, nobody's ever heard of them. But in a real world context, they are just a wealth of knowledge. You're one of
Yeah.
those people, Paul. As a trainer in the military, you have an established career, but in the public sector, from a commercial point of view, people aren't really aware of you as a trainer on some level because you have years as a martial artist, but it's never been your focal point from a professional point of view. Yet I know,
never a business, right?
Right, exactly. But I know that you're a phenomenal trainer. And one of the things that we're going to do and have done in the past is take you and make you a featured part of these classes so people can learn your real world experience. And let me tell you about one of the biggest things that we're going to accomplish on a virtual level. And I really want people to take advantage of this. We're going to be featuring one of the few people that I call teacher. His name is Lou Chiodo. And he was not only a Marine officer for 10 years, but he spent 23 years working as a trooper for the California Highway Patrol right on the Mexican border. The California Highway Patrol is the largest state agency in our country. Paul, he rewrote the firearms training program for the largest state agency in the country. They have more chiefs of police than most departments have officers. Can you imagine the bureaucracy that he had to get through to make that change? And how did he do that? Through results. And this is somebody who was on the front lines of the LA riots. The front lines of the LA riots. I cannot think of a more I'm trying to think of the best way to say it, but a more timely time. I can't say it more elegant than that.
More relevant.
A more relevant time. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank God you're here, right? Don't cut that out. The raw footage is good stuff. But seriously though, a more relevant time for people to have a chance to learn from him than right now. Like, this is the person who has real world experience that has saved countless people's lives with the things that he's trained them. Officers, he had one class, and this guy, he's taught hundreds of agencies and he's trained his whole department and other things like that. And he's retired now. But he had one 2-day event for a department where the individuals he was training went to work that evening, got into a shooting, came back the next day and said, "Thank God for what you taught us. We just applied it last night and it worked." Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who's saving lives. And and I'll mention this too, and this is the last I'm going to mention, then I want to kick it back to you. But there's so many things that we could talk about. The value of virtual training that I think is one of our biggest barriers to getting these classes out there when it comes to self-defense skills, because I think people question the value, which is good to question value, but the value is here. But then the other thing is, we've got this amazing man I call him a national treasure. And I know that sounds like a sales pitch, but I've been working with him since.
No, I'll vouch. He's awesome. I have no financial interest in this at all. And yeah, he's the man. Lou is incredible.
He really is incredible. But he's also somebody that teaches something called target focused shooting, which are gun skills that we can trace in writing to World War I, that were developed through things like the Shanghai Municipal Police, through World War II, through the OSS, which eventually became the CIA, and then through the California Highway Patrol and in other departments, where they took these methods that were based on the body's natural responses to stress, that people can learn very quickly with a high chance of success with minimal training, developed in combat, for combat, no theory, field tested, saving lives. That is the exact opposite of what most people learn, which are methods that were developed on the range for the range, but don't work well under real conditions. Which is why, if you look at the national average, police hitting real bad guys in real gunfights, that national average is very low. The overwhelming majority of time, bullets are not going into the bad guys, they're going into the public. And it's not the fault of the officers, it's what they're being taught. But much like we talked about with martial arts, Most of the training methods are developed in the training environment, are validated in the training environment, but don't translate well to the real world. People need real skills that will keep them alive. And
Yeah.
these are the skills, and he is the man with the experience. And me, having been to triple digit homicide scenes,
Yep.
these are the experiences that will tell you how to save your life for real. And the great part is learning how to use these methods is easier than the conventional methods that are taught. And, you know, Shane, somebody that you actually referred to train to me, wrote me one of the nicest reviews, and I didn't know anything about what he was going to write.
Yeah.
But he said that the methods that he learned from me, and this is not because of me, because I did not develop these methods. I'm just a link in a long chain. I get no credit for this. But he said
Right.
that the methods that I trained him were among the best methods that he's ever learned. And this is someone who served his country overseas and who was in special forces. And he specifically mentioned that even with his military training, these were still among the best methods that he's ever learned. And that's because they were developed in combat, for combat. They're proven in combat. You can learn them quick, be safe, effective, and responsible through a live interactive class where you don't have to leave your house and where you can learn not only the methods on how to defend yourself, but how to develop these methods. People couldn't go to the range during COVID.
Right.
People couldn't buy ammo during COVID because it all got bought up and what was available was very expensive. But even if they could buy the ammo, already had it, most people didn't have a place to shoot. So Lou's not just going to empower you with methods to save your life that you can learn from the convenience and safety of your own home. You don't have to travel somewhere. You can learn it right in your own house. But now you can learn how to develop these methods in your house and live fire, but in your house through dry fire, through the use of airsoft, through the use of laser trainers, so that you're not left helpless when we're in the middle of a crisis, like the riots, like COVID. All these new gun owners, because of all these things going on, but they have no way to train their skills. And even if they train their skills, a lot of what's taught doesn't work, but they don't know any better because most of the instructors don't have enough real world experience. I can tell you right now that the things I read on the internet have almost nothing to do with the countless homicides that I've actually seen. And the people who've been in the field, they know that what's actually happening are not the things that are being talked about. Those are the things that you need to know. So I don't want to go on and on, but I'm very passionate about this because I know we have the ability to help people, but I also feel like there are impediments to helping people because people might not understand the value of the methods being taught or might question the venue through which the methods are being taught. And that's why this first course that we're offering, we're doing an introductory price. I know it sounds like a sales pitch, but it's true. We want to get people to feel comfortable trying this so that they can then go out and share their experiences with other people. Because just like my school, I didn't advertise. Training triple digits people every week came from word of mouth because people took our courses, liked our courses, and then recommended other people to train with us. And that's what's going to happen with these virtual classes too. So the very first class and only the first class is an introductory price. It's a 4-week course. It's $99.99. It's under $100. And people will also have the opportunity for the same price to do private training with Lou, one-on-one consultation virtually. And I know with what you charge for a consultation, $99 to train with somebody like Lou Chiodo, that's nothing. And it will never happen again. But we want to give people, we want to have a low threshold of entrance so people see the value of this training, spread the word so that other people can benefit from this training too.
That's awesome. That's really good. And that is a deal, man. Like, I don't know if people understand, because the value of instruction that they're going to get for $100 and be able to drill and train all that stuff and have that one-on-one time. I will, like, we both have taught large groups. You do it way more frequently than I do. Mine is usually in the context of a military setting. but we can't donate our individual time to each student in these in a large class. Just it's impossible. And so they would have to pay for our time for private instruction, which is hundreds of dollars an hour, at that point, and a much different level of dedication. So for $100 to get all of this material, and then to have, Lou have one-on-one time with them to tweak them and work with them like that, that's just hugely valuable. And it's something you can't offer actually in a one-on-one, sorry, in a large group setting in person. You actually can't do that. So that's a big advantage, I think, with the virtual courses. And another thing I want to say too about, people ask me all the time, like, well, I'm going to, especially lately, last 3-4 months, I get questions of, well, I want to buy a pistol, something I could carry for self-defense. What pistol should I get? And this sounds like a dumb statement, but I say it because I need to get them to think about this first before they make a selection. The best, say, what's the best pistol for me to have for self-defense? And my answer is always the one that you'll use. All right. Because people will pick up a full-size Glock, let's say, which is a great weapon, and it's too big for them to carry. They leave it in their car. They leave it in their bag, sits in their glove box, sits in their gun safe. Useless, right? I mean, a 5-shot revolver, if that's what they're going to carry for whatever, you know what I mean? A little Smith & Wesson Airweight is better than their full-size Glock, which is going to perform better on the range, have more rounds, all the benefits, that sits in the gun safe. Well, we can apply that to training too. The training you're not going to do because you can't find a place to do it at, or this, or you don't have time, or it's a big investment to, spend more money to do a training weekend or to join a school or do those things. The training you're not going to do, the training you would do through a virtual class is far more valuable than training you're not going to do. And so this gets people, skill sets in a very valuable way, introduces them to things. And of course they can extend that training. They can do one of your weekend, once things are open again, they can do a weekend workshop and blow off a ton of rounds at a range, or do force on force training, fight against somebody. Hopefully I'll dress up and join you. We can go beat people up in fist suits. Then they get to beat us up with their skills, like these are all good things we can do, but zero training, because you can't do that, isn't nearly as valuable as the training you would in the skill sets you would build in a Zoom class. And they could learn a lot and get those basics in a Zoom class, and then do other training on top of that later if they choose to get even better at applying those skills. Or even if they end it right there, they're a heck of a lot further along than if they did zero, and that's the biggest thing, and the biggest takeaway, I think, with that stuff, and how hugely valuable this method, of delivering instruction can be. So I kind of want to close with that. I'll let you add any closing statements you want, but I think we've got enough content here, and have certainly talked quite a while. So any last things you'd like to say before we close?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think you really summed that up well. And it's not one versus the other. It's
Right.
the ability to take advantage of multiple ways of training that will create this total package. And this was what I was trying to convey earlier, but I think you did a really good job of bringing it together in a clear message for people. And I wouldn't do this training if I didn't feel it was valuable. And I'm going to say something that I don't do as a credit to me, but only as an example of my dedication to students. And I'm bringing this up, Paul, because you were there and you were a witness to this firsthand. Doing the force on force training, when I taught 14 years at a college self-defense class, during one of the force on force scenarios, my Achilles tendon actually snapped in half. Paul, you were there when it happened.
I remember that. I was there when that happened. Yeah.
Not only did I not end the scenario until it was over, but I didn't go to class, or excuse me, I didn't go to the hospital until class was over.
And we finished that class
that day. And I came back to teach the second class after I was done at the hospital. And I don't say that as a credit to me, like I'm a tough guy or anything like that. That's not the point. But it just goes to
I do.
show,
I'll say it for you.
it just goes to show how dedicated and motivated I am to helping the people that I teach. I would not do virtual classes if I did not truly believe that virtual classes were a powerful tool to empower people, to make people safer, and to change people's lives. I just wouldn't do it. So
Yeah.
that's the only
Oh yeah.
reason why I'm doing it. And I do want to clarify so there's no misunderstanding. The 4-week course featuring Lou Chiodo, which is a live interactive class, which means you're going to be able to talk to him and ask him questions and listen and present concepts, but it will also include physical practice. That 4-week course with the live interaction, the physical practice, the ability to talk to him just like we're talking right now, that is $99.99. The personal instruction that you can do a one-time personal instruction with him to further develop, ask more questions, do whatever you would want to do and get that live one-on-one, that is an additional optional $99.99 for those who want it. Both of those are introductory costs, but I don't want to mislead anybody as
Oh, okay. I
to
understand now.
what we're charging for what. But you're right, you bring this up because Lou and I noticed the same thing. When you are doing that live interactive virtual class, you do have the ability to give each student more one-on-one time than you would in a group class, because the economics of a group class is you have to have enough people for the instructor to travel to that location. And although we give everybody as much attention as we can, it's still a group setting. With a Zoom setting, you have a much better environment to interact with people on a more one-on-one level. But the private instruction, that is a separate thing. The other thing I'll mention is that I'm going to have classes featuring you, and you have a lot of very important things to offer. The very first thing we talked about was how to set up your AR for success. You mentioned gun selection. Not only on the range have I seen people's performance dramatically compromised, decreased by bad gun selection, I have been to many scenes where I know for a fact the reason why the person died was the gun they were trying to use, the way they were carrying it. One of two or both of those things is what got them dead. So gun
That gets
selection
them a
is a really
lot.
important
Yeah.
thing. Setting
Hmm.
yourself up before the event so you have the best chance of success is really important. And that's the first class that we're going to do with you. But we have a lot of classes that we teach. I teach a self-defense class for kids that's 1 hour long. It's only $10. People can go sign their kids up for that at any time. We teach a 2-hour class, unarmed self-defense class for men, women, and teens. That's only $30. And people are always telling me, oh, you don't charge enough. My mom was indigent.
I tell you that.
I know.
All the time.
I spent 2 winters as a homeless teen. My mom was indigent. I grew up in and around the city of Detroit. Now, I spent time with my grandparents who were upper middle class, but I also spent time in very poor environments and very poor conditions. And I learned a long time ago that the people often have the greatest need, had the least means. And it was really important to me that we never set prices that exclude people who have a need because they didn't have the means. So our prices are undervalued, so to speak, from a monetary point of view. But for us, it never mattered because we make up for it on volume. We teach so many students that we do extremely well from a financial point of view. But I would rather have lower prices so that more people can participate. That's just my personal thing. That all goes back to my dedication to the students. But in this video, there will be links for a complete list of our virtual courses and our specific class featuring Lou. And I really encourage people to take advantage of those. We are making them as affordable as possible, but don't let our prices make people think the class doesn't have value, because it's actually the opposite. We charge way less than what these courses are worth, especially this introductory price, because we want to get the information into the hands of as many people as we can. That's my dedication to the people that I want to help.
Perfect. Well, I think that's good in closing. So I'll leave a few closing statements. Thank you, Ian Kinder from Live Safe Academy. I will have links to all the things we're talking about in the description of the video. I'll just close with this. If you guys watching the video like what we're talking about and the topics that we're dealing with here, this is an important topic, again, as far as being a total person, and a man who takes care of himself and takes care of other people around them in his circle. guy who's on his mental point of origin, guys who want to be that more, have that more of alpha leadership and that presence. You have to know how to defend yourself. You have to know how to do these things. But even if that's not who you are, and you're one of my female listeners, you have to obviously know these things too. You don't want to become a victim in a bad circumstance. Nobody does. And so these topics about self-defense, survival, being prepared. I'm not a survival channel, but the practical aspect of these things are good for us to talk about sometimes. So if you like it, make sure you hit the like button. Do one of Ian's courses and you won't be disappointed. But also let me know in the comments too if you like this stuff. I could have Ian on more regularly. We could talk about self-defense topics, maybe answer some questions for people and keep them shorter and more to the point, and we could do some of that stuff for you guys if you enjoy it. So thanks again for listening.
Thanks, Paul, very much.
Yeah. All right, man. So that was pretty good. It's good.
What was it good? It was probably a little bit long, but was it good?
It was long. That's fine, dude. I think it was sick.